Following the end of America's Civil War, the time had come to reconstruct the 11 states that had seceded from the Union. Which way would the drama of Reconstruction move? In a speech titled, "In What New Skin Will the Old Snake Come Forth?" Frederick Douglass declared his own estimation of the immediate future. Slavery is not abolished until the black man has the ballot. While the legislatures of the South retain the right to pass laws making any discrimination between black and white, slavery still lives there. Douglass was partly right. Slavery ended with the defeat of the Confederacy and the ratification of the 13th Amendment. But the new birth of freedom envisioned by Lincoln would not come easily. There was a real sense in which the old snake, as Douglass put it, was still alive. Reconstruction began in part months before Lincoln's assassination. In December of 1863, the president issued his Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction. Those who had been Confederates could now take an oath of allegiance to the United States and to all its laws and proclamations concerning slavery. They could thereby receive amnesty. Not everyone fell under the amnesty plan. Officials from the Confederate government and the highest-ranking military officers were exempt. Confederate President Jefferson Davis spent 2 years in prison at Fort Monroe, although he was never prosecuted. Initially, his captors placed him in leg irons. After protests from his doctor and others, the irons were removed. Robert E. Lee applied for government pardon in 1865 and signed the requisite oath, but his application was not processed. Earlier that year, on January 12th, General William Tecumseh Sherman had met with black leaders at the home of Charles Greene in Savannah, Georgia. Sherman asked what they wanted. The 68-year-old Garrison Frazier, a former slave who had bought his freedom at the beginning of the war and was a longtime Baptist minister, replied, "We want to be placed on land until we are able to buy it and make it our own." 4 days later, Sherman issued Special Field Order No. 15. The order reserved a large strip of coastal land for settlement by freed people and authorized plots of up to 40 acres of tillable land for black families. Sherman's order came to be known as 40 acres and a mule, but it contained only the reallocation of land, not a guarantee of a mule or any other livestock. Brigadier General Rufus Saxton, who administered the distribution of land to former slaves, sometimes loaned or distributed surplus army mules to the families who settled the land. Following Lincoln's assassination, a series of events upended Sherman's order. Vice President Andrew Johnson, a Southern Democrat who had been loyal to the Union, took control of the Oval Office. He issued thousands of individual pardons. This allowed many former Confederates to regain property and political power. They seized the opportunity to pass what came to be known as Black Codes. Such laws restricted black citizens in their occupations, voting, and mobility. For example, the codes allowed Southern authorities to arrest blacks under broadly defined vagrancy laws and hire out their labor to white employers as punishment or to satisfy fines and court costs. Euphemistically, Mississippi called its Black Code an act to confer civil rights on freedmen and for other purposes. Early in his presidency, Andrew Johnson appointed provisional governors for 7 of the former Confederate states. Governors loyal to the Union were already in place in Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Virginia. The 7 governors were instructed to call constitutional conventions of loyal citizens, abolish slavery, and begin restoring civil government. Most of them served only a few months until elections produced new state governments later in 1865. As for the freedmen who were promised 40 acres, over time, they largely lost the land granted them under Sherman's order. Where they had received mules under the Army's practice, they generally lost them as well. As for former Confederates who had been exempt from pardon, On Christmas Day, 1868, President Johnson issued a general amnesty to all and to every person who, directly or indirectly, participated in the late insurrection or rebellion. Though he was not named individually, Jefferson Davis was covered under Johnson's proclamation. While Lee died in 1870, Davis lived as a free man until 1889. New Orleans held an enormous funeral procession in his memory. In the meantime, what Frederick Douglass called for, that former slaves would have the ballot, developed as a part of reconstructing the former Confederate states. In 1867, formerly enslaved black men registered to vote and participated in elections to determine whether constitutional conventions would be held and who would serve as delegates. In 1868 and 1869, black men also voted on the resulting constitutions and helped elect new biracial state legislatures. These victories came amidst a wave of legislation passed by Congress. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 and the 14th Amendment, ratified 2 years later, granted citizenship to all people born or naturalized in the United States. By doing so, the constitutional amendment overturned the 1857 Supreme Court case Dred v. Sanford. Between 1867 and 1868, Congress passed a series of 4 Reconstruction bills, including the Military Reconstruction Act, which split the South into districts governed by the U.S. military. The bill also required the 10 unreconstructed Southern states to register male citizens aged 21 or older of whatever race, color, or previous condition to vote. The 11th former Confederate state, Tennessee, had already been reconstructed by the time of the act. Helping to pass Reconstruction legislation was Thaddeus Stevens, a representative from Pennsylvania and the leader of a pro-civil rights faction called the Radical Republicans. His efforts triumphed despite repeated vetoes from President Johnson. Indeed, Johnson and the Radical Republicans were about to confront each other in a first for the nation, a presidential impeachment.